Drybulk uptrends. The surmises in this talk can change like the light of the day. In the past, wars have often proven to be good for shipping, but this one is the worst in Europe since 1945, and it may yet escalate to involve more actors and lead to the deployment of chemical, biological, and even possibly nuclear weapons. I hope not. We already had a lot on our plate before the 24th February invasion, including a global shortage of commodities of all kinds, many of which originate in the combatant countries. The major iron ore producing areas in Brazil and Australia have been subject to seasonal rains and cyclones which routinely have interfered with mining, rail and port operations. Copper output has been beset by stoppages across the world, ranging from Chile to Mongolia due to the never-ending strikes, environmental issues and royalty disputes. Grains and oilseeds production in the Americas, Europe and Australia has been hampered by flooding, drought and wildfires. We could go on, but suffice to say it is really bad time to find large volumes of Russian and Ukrainian oil, coal, gas, grains, oilseeds, steel, forest products and fertilizers, locked in and unexportable. This is feeding into the pre-existing condition of global commodity and goods price inflation, which is demanding higher interest rates, raising debt, servicing costs, and holding back consumer spending. The monetary response to higher prices will be higher interest rates, and the fiscal response to COVID will be higher taxes. China is enduring its first big outbreak of the Omicron variant. At least 40 to 45 million people are reported under some form of lockdown, although the authorities prefer to call it life on pause. The restriction pose a threat to China's economic rebound and the world's supply chains. In Hong Kong, the death rate from COVID-19 is twice as large as the peak of Britain's second wave in early 2021. Morgues are overflowing with victims and hospitals struggling to cope. In a relatively calm week for the bulkers, Handysize segment was the only one being in a mood to shake things up a bit. Reporting weekly gains of around $2,000, the workhorses of Drybulk sector managed to stand at $29,922 daily on Friday, or around $8,000 and $4,000 above the respective Friday's closings of Capesizes and Kamsarmaxes. On the same wavelength with Capesizes, Supramaxes trended sideways in the last 5 trading days, concluding marginally lower at $32,147 daily. Being under pressure for the most part of the week, Kamsarmaxes lingered today at $25,868 daily, or roughly $3,000 below the last week's closing on Friday. Beneath the surface, though, there was heavy turmoil on the political, macroeconomic and macro commodity fronts. Inflation remains elevated, reflecting supply and demand imbalances related to the pandemic, higher energy prices, and broader price pressures. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia is causing tremendous human and economic hardship. The implications from this for the US economy are highly uncertain, but in the near term, the invasion and related events are likely to create additional upward pressure on inflation and weigh on economic activity. Chinese cabinet said it would resolve risks around property developers in China. On top of that, a sweeping set of promises this week from Xi's government to make regulation more transparent and predictable had also a positive bearing. On Friday last, US President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping began their first direct talks since November amid growing US concern over Beijing's relationship with Russia and its stance on the war in Ukraine. Following the meeting, Chinese President Xi Jinping stressed that China and the United States must not only guide their relations forward along the right track but also shoulder their share of international responsibilities and work for world peace and tranquility. Xi told Biden, "The world is neither tranquil nor stable, and the Ukraine crisis is not something we want to see." He further criticized the economic punishment the US and its allies have imposed on Russia in response to the invasion, which could possibly be extended to other countries including China. The White House stressed that President Biden described the implications and consequences if China provides material support to Russia. The spot market adopted a wait-and-see stance during the 11th week of this tumultuous trading year. Capesize, in a rather flat week, the index concluded last week at 21,604 daily, or marginally lower week on week, in spite of a softer tone in the last 3 trading days. The leading Baltic Capesize index managed to keep hovering above the $20,000 mark for 7 trading days in a row. On the commodity front, Chinese iron ore futures scaled a 1-week high on Friday to mark their 4th consecutive weekly gain, with hopes for additional stimulus having a positive bearing. On the period front, and with FFA values remaining unchanged, the S-Cape 175,000 deadweight 2003 build was heard to have fixed minimum 11 to about 13 months at 25,500 daily for end March delivery China. Panamax sizes owners had to face the music upon the week's opening as bids were lower across the board and offers had to adjust, shifting the Panamax 82 average by around 10% lower week on week at 25,868 daily. FFA market broadcasting gave Contago signals. Period interest was maintained, albeit at lower levels compared to last week. Cargill was perhaps a bright exception, chartering the Navios Gemini 81,700 2018 build from Xiamen end March for 11 to 14 months at $31,000 daily. Supramax, a significant redistribution of forces from east to west, was the main theme of the Supramax segment, as the Atlantic has started rebalancing with the Pacific. The overall load remained almost unaltered as the BSI, or the 10 time charter routes, concluded at 32,147, shedding a mere 0.6% week on week. Period rates remained quite steady with solid support from the FFAs, which gained some ground for the next quarter and remained largely steady on contracts with later maturity. A Dolphin 57 locked 29,000 daily basis delivery West Africa for minimum 12 months trading. With scenarios about strict lockdowns in China that could have a visible impact on production looming, as well as the alternative of loading ex-Russian Pacific fading due to constantly tightening sanctions and increasing number of owners simply preferring to take a repositioning cargo rather than going for a Far East round voyage. On the Handysize, the balance is tilting towards the Atlantic again for the Handysize, like in the story, The Return of the Jade Eye. The Atlantic came back in past week from the dark side to take its rightful place as the leader of the handy market, pushing the Far East market into red after quite some time. The two hemispheres took different directions for a lot of different reasons. Overall, the market, mostly on the backing of the big surge upwards from the Atlantic routes, moved positively again, adding 6.9% week on week on its value and bringing the 7 routes time charter average just short of $30,000 breaking daily, the year record all through the week. Another active week for the period desk with a substantial variance between the two basins. While we saw global freight 28,387 2010 build fixing from Colombo 5 to 7 months at 32,000 daily, We heard a 35,000 deadweight lady fixing 4 to 6 months within Atlantic, fixing at 26,500 from her US Gulf position. Big surge upwards from the Atlantic routes. On the sale and purchase front, despite what our intuition would tell us in the face of conflict in Eastern Europe, the age-old adage, seeing is believing, has the final word, as the market is abounding with sales, candidates, enquiries and transactions, rather than the current geopolitical affairs is the thermometer with which we are measuring our industry's temperature. The second-hand segment seems to be running on all cylinders, luring both necessary counterparts for sales, transactions, that is, sellers and buyers, to the table. Those that made shrewd asset plays by buying ships as far back as first half 2020 and as recently as a few months ago are there to sell and surely make a pretty penny, with the greater profits coming to those that bought them earlier. Thereafter, they may contemplate reinvesting in firm and still firming assets. The buoyant freight market has breathed new life into elderly and turn-of-the-century handy-size, handy-max, supermax and panamax ships that were once destined for the beaches of the Indian subcontinent. Sorry about that. These vintage vessels are coming out of the woodwork to catch a piece of the action. The older Panamaxes have had a noteworthy rise in demand as of late. Then there are the middle-aged ships, namely the handy sizes and supramaxes, continuing to flood the dance floors with sellers and buyers listening to the same tune and dancing in step with each other rather harmoniously. The new kids on the block seem to be the young ultras and younger, larger handy-size vessels appearing on the market, perhaps as their owners observe the already high and still rising prices of ships and look to rake in higher prices for their younger vessels. Granted, there are still some pundits watching and wondering when will the bubble burst and does it make sense to buy this high. For now, though there seems to be a real, renewed and persistent interest in investing in shipping assets, backed by the firm freight rates and optimistic outlook we have been exposed to. In real, the sole representative of the Capes this week was the BWTS fitted Stella Anita 180,000 China built 2012, reported sold to the Greeks at $29 million. There was plenty of action for Kamsar Maxes. The modern BWTS fitted Alam Kuku 82,000 Japanese built 2019 was committed to unnamed buyers at $38.75 million. The BWTS fitted and Tier 2 compliant Agri Grande 82,000 China built 2017 was sold at $29.7 million, considerably lower than her Japan built counterpart, with the former displaying the usual premium for the Japanese pedigree. Undisclosed buyers paid $22 million for the BWTS fitted Test 82 MBA Liberty 82,000 deadweight China built 2010, including the remainder of a time charter. The sister vessels Everglory 81,000 2012 China built and Renaissance again 2012 China built found suitors for $19.5 million apiece. Moving downward to gear tonnage, the BWTS fitted Eco Ultra Initiator 62,000 deadweight Japan built 2019 was snatched up by the Chinese buyers for $36.5 million daily. Sale price in line with the last ton. Ultra Excellence. The Test 58 Friendly Seas 58,000 China built 2008 was committed to Chinese interests for a firm price of $18.75 million. For comparison, the same age sister Ji Taishan went for $17.4 million, and the 2009 built sister Nicholas III was sold at $17 million, but both concluded in mid-February. With older Supramaxes, a figure in excess of $14 million was enough for Tolani Group to part ways with their Prabhu Gopal 56,000 deadweight, Japan built 2003. In the workhorse segment, the Happy Hero 32,000, Japan built 2006, achieved $13 million, following the benchmark set by her same age sister, the Chadha, a couple of weeks ago. Pacific Basin offloaded their Imabari 28,000 Cape Flattery 2004 build for a respectable $9.75 million with buyers undisclosed. The buoyant freight market has breathed new life into elderly and turn-of-the-century handy-size, Handymax, Supramax and Panamax ships that were once destined for the beaches of the Indian subcontinent.